Hello, today we're going to discuss the human immunodeficiency virus. Okay, so HIV is a retrovirus. Retroviruses have RNA instead of DNA for their genetic material. They have a lipid envelope surrounding the capsid obtained from the plasma membrane of a host cell, and in the host cytoplasm, reverse transcriptase synthesizes DNA from the RNA template. DNA integrates into the host chromosome until activated. Here's what the HIV life cycle looks like. So first there is going to be binding, so HIV binds to receptors on the surface of the CD4 cell. Then there's going to be fusion. The HIV envelope and the CD4 cell membrane fuse, which allows HIV to enter the CD4 cell. Then there's going to be reverse transcription, so inside the CD4 cell, HIV releases and uses reverse transcriptase to convert its genetic material, HIV RNA, into HIV DNA. The conversion of HIV RNA to HIV DNA allows HIV to enter the CD4 cell nucleus and combine with the cell's genetic material, cell DNA. Then there's going to be integration, so inside the CD4 cell nucleus, the HIV releases integrase. HIV uses integrase to insert its viral DNA into the DNA of the CD4 cell. Once that happens, there's going to be replication, so once integrated into the CD4 cell DNA, HIV begins to use the machinery of the CD4 cell to make long chains of HIV proteins. The protein chains are the building blocks for more HIV. Then new HIV proteins and HIV RNA move to the surface of the cell and assemble into immature or non-infectious HIV. And then there's going to be budding. So newly formed, immature, non-infectious HIV pushes itself out of the host CD4 cell. The new HIV releases protease, and protease acts to break up the long protein chains that form the immature virus. The smaller HIV proteins combine to form mature or infectious HIV. Okay, the lethality of HIV. So HIV infects and attacks white blood cells. White blood cells are essential to the immune system for fighting off viruses and infections. One reason as to why HIV is difficult to combat is because the very cells that fight viruses are being invaded by a virus themselves. HIV has a spectrum of virulence, so virulence is the severity or harmfulness of a disease or poison. So high virulence demonstrates high lethality, but a low range of transmission, and then low virulence demonstrates low lethality, but a high range of transmission. Okay, more about HIV. So HIV mutates and acquires resistance to combative drugs very quickly. This is why no single drug can be produced to combat HIV. As soon as a drug shows some effectiveness in killing a portion of the HIV-infected cells, the remaining that already have a natural degree of resistance will survive, reproduce, and naturally acquire more resistance. So each of those diagrams shown do a good job of demonstrating how a portion of the HIV-infected cells will be vulnerable to the drug, but then there's this whole other portion that has natural resistance, and again, they're going to reproduce and gradually acquire even more resistance. So to combat HIV, there's this program implemented called HAART, which stands for Highly Active Antiretroviral Therapy. As opposed to single drug or dual drug therapies, the combination of 3 or more antiretroviral drugs can work as a team. This effectively suppresses a wide variety of HIV that can exist within a single viral population. If one drug is unable to suppress a certain viral type, one or both of the other agents would be more than likely to do so. Drugs are changed or rotated during treatment to keep the drug-resistant levels of HIV-infected cells to be collectively low. So as soon as the HIV cells start acquiring resistance to perhaps all 3 or 4 of the drugs that are used, then you rotate the drugs out, change it up, so that there's always this low level of resistance and more basically greater susceptibility of cells collectively than resistance by constantly changing what they're being exposed to. Now, despite HAART being a very effective strategy, those who have HIV still have a shorter lifespan than those who do not have HIV. This is mainly because every type of drug used to combat HIV has the following characteristics. They're incredibly powerful, they're going to have side effects, and they can also be expensive. So some people with HIV just can't afford to keep up with the medications. Others, it's just the side effects become too great, so they have to take a break from the medication for a while. And then, that's more time for resistance to build up. So even if you take a break, go back on the medication, take a break. It's just gradually more and more time for HIV to acquire even more resistance, collectively become more powerful itself, and eventually it just slowly, takes over.
Thank you for watching. Please share and subscribe, and remember to spread kindness.